We are told that to feel deeply is to live fully. But Carl Jung saw a shadow behind emotional attachment, a form of self-abandonment disguised as love. He believed that when we cling too tightly, we lose the self. What remains is a persona, shaped by fear, not truth. We say we love, but often we depend. We say we care, but often we grasp. True love cannot bloom from desperation. Jung understood that attachment is not born out of strength, but of insecurity. When we are disconnected from our inner center, we reach outward, desperate for grounding. We project our unmet needs, our unresolved childhood wounds, and our unconscious desires onto others. We ask them to be our mirror, our savior, our anchor. And when they fail, we collapse. Attachment seems romantic, but it's transactional. Beneath the warmth, there's an invisible contract. Don't leave, or I'll fall apart. Jung saw this as a betrayal of the self, a handing over of inner power in exchange for the illusion of emotional safety. This is not to demonize connection, but to confront our blindness. Most attachments are unconscious. They are echoes of past relationships, unhealed traumas, and inherited patterns. We call it chemistry, but it's compulsion. We call it destiny, but it's dependency. To detach is not to feel less. It is to feel from a place of wholeness. It is to offer love without bargaining. It is to stand in presence, not panic. Jung knew this would feel threatening to the ego, which thrives on drama, on clinging, on control. But the soul wants to be free. So detachment, in Jungian terms, is not emotional numbness. It is the radical act of returning to yourself, of seeing the difference between love and longing, between presence and possession. It is the doorway to liberation. You think your pain comes from the person who left, from the thing you lost. But Jung would say, it's not the object of attachment that hurts. It's the projection. What you embedded into that person, that place, that plan. We don't mourn people. We mourn pieces of ourselves we gave away. This is why letting go feels like death, because we never truly lost them. We lost the image, the hope, the meaning we built around them. Attachment is the attempt to fuse your sense of self with something or someone outside of you. And the more fragmented your inner world is, the more seductive attachment becomes. We believe we are grieving the loss of love, but we are grieving the collapse of a psychological scaffolding we built to hold ourselves up. The person leaves, and the structure shatters. This is why letting go feels like identity loss. Because when we attach unconsciously, we don't just connect, we construct. We build a story, a role, an emotional home around the other. When they vanish, it isn't just pain, it's disorientation, it's collapse. Jung teaches that this collapse is necessary, not because the relationship was wrong, but because the projection must die. The fantasy must dissolve so the self can be reborn. Letting go is not an act of forgetting. It's an act of reclaiming. Reclaiming the parts of yourself you gave away, hoping to be completed. Reclaiming the strength to stand alone. Reclaiming your story, not as tragedy, but as initiation. To detach is not to dishonor the past. It's to stop worshiping the wound, to stop replaying the pain, to stop letting absence define you. Grieve deeply, honestly, wildly. But know what you're grieving. You are not just grieving a person. You are grieving the part of yourself you buried in them. Jung distinguished between true connection and clinging attachment. Connection is reciprocal. It breathes. It evolves. Attachment is possessive. It grips. It fears. Where connection offers freedom, attachment demands control. Many confuse one for the other. They chase intensity, not intimacy. They pursue closeness, but fear vulnerability. Jung knew that only a differentiated self, a person who doesn't vanish in the presence of another, can connect deeply. Otherwise, you're not relating. You're fusing. And fusion is not love. It is fear pretending to be devotion. True connection does not arise from need. It arises from presence, from choice, from the strength to hold space for another without collapsing your own boundaries. Jung's insight was that attachment often masquerades as love, but at its core, it's about control. Controlling how the other behaves, feels, stays. It's about fear of abandonment, dressed as intimacy. Connection invites openness. Attachment fears loss. Connection thrives on individuality. Attachment erases it. The deeper the attachment, the more blurred the lines between I and you. Jung saw this as dangerous, because when we dissolve into another, we don't find unity. We lose identity. To relate with depth, you must bring your whole self. You must be rooted in who you are. Otherwise, every relationship becomes a performance, a desperate act of keeping someone close, rather than a conscious act of meeting them honestly. This is where real connection begins, not in the merging, but in the mirroring, not in ownership, but in recognition. You see them clearly. You let yourself be seen, vulnerably, and you both stay, not because you need to, but because you choose to. Behind every compulsive attachment is a wound. Jung called it the shadow, the denied, repressed, and hidden parts of our psyche. The parts that say, I am not enough unless I am needed, loved, desired. When we don't face the shadow, we seek others to carry it. We expect them to complete us, soothe us, fix us. But no one can carry your shadow, and no one should. Jung believed that the shadow is not evil. It is simply unconscious. It acts without our permission, but not without our participation. It causes us to overreact, to cling, to sabotage relationships, all in service of its own survival. And until we integrate it, we repeat it. We think we're falling in love, but we're falling into patterns. We think we're connecting, but we're actually reenacting old emotional scripts. The shadow doesn't want healing. It wants fulfillment, but only consciousness can heal. Jung taught that we must turn and face the shadow with honesty, with courage, with compassion. We must ask, what am I truly afraid of? What am I demanding from others that I refuse to give myself? This confrontation is not comfortable. It is humbling, but it is necessary, because as long as the shadow remains unseen, we will call our dependency devotion, our fear romance, and our projection reality. To detach is to reclaim. It is to draw your shadow into the light and see, I am enough without your validation. I am worthy without your attention. I do not need to be needed in order to exist. That is where emotional freedom begins. Detachment is often misunderstood. It's not indifference. It's not coldness. It's clarity. It's loving without clinging, giving without controlling, desiring without demanding. Jung taught that detachment is the fruit of individuation, the process of becoming whole within. When you are whole, you no longer use others to complete you. You love from fullness, not emptiness. You remain rooted, even in intimacy. You walk beside, not behind. Detachment is freedom with love, not freedom from love. But detachment isn't a single act. It's a process, a dismantling of illusions. It begins with noticing how often your emotions are reactions to unmet expectations, not to reality. Jung believed we suffer most when we confuse our projections for truth. We imagine how people should act, speak, respond, and when they don't, we collapse. Detachment invites you to observe without demand. to love what is, not what should be. Jung taught that a mature psyche can hold contradiction. You can feel love and not possess. You can feel longing and not act. This is the inner spaciousness that detachment creates. A space where emotion can move freely, where the ego doesn't grasp, where the soul breathes. Real detachment requires courage. It asks you to stay connected without needing, to give without expectation, to walk away, not in anger, but in truth. It doesn't shut the heart. It strengthens it. In a world obsessed with emotional merging, detachment becomes a rebellion, a return to center, a reminder that love is not proven by sacrifice, but by sovereignty. We are trained to seek approval from parents, teachers, partners, bosses, institutions. From birth, we are measured, compared, evaluated. But Jung warned, until the self becomes your inner compass, you are not truly alive. You are merely reacting. Inner authority is the quiet voice that says, "This is right for me," even when the world screams the opposite. This voice doesn't scream. It whispers. It doesn't beg. It knows. But the modern world teaches you to distrust it, to ignore it in favor of performance, image, and conformity. Jung believed this was the root of psychological suffering. Not that we feel too much, but that we betray what we know. When you have no inner authority, you attach your worth to how others see you. You become a reflection, not a being. You bend to opinions. You shrink to avoid conflict. You become an actor in someone else's story, not the author of your own. But the moment you reclaim inner authority, you become solid, grounded. You can love without losing yourself. You can walk away without collapsing. You can speak without needing to be agreed with. Because your truth is not up for vote. Emotional detachment is not a rejection of feeling. It's the result of deep alignment. When your core is intact, you don't need others to validate your choices, your boundaries, your identity. Jung's path was not about arrogance. It was about integration. To reclaim yourself is not to dominate others. It's to stop abandoning yourself. It's to rise from the noise with clarity, sovereignty, and a love that no longer seeks permission. Pain is not punishment. It's a passage. Jung believed that suffering, when faced, becomes a teacher. Detachment hurts, not because it's wrong, but because it burns away illusion. It shows you where you merged, where you lost yourself, where you abandoned truth for comfort. This pain, if embraced, becomes alchemy. It transforms loss into clarity, sadness into strength. You do not escape pain by avoiding it. You escape it by integrating it, by letting it shape you without owning you. Jung's psychology wasn't about avoiding darkness, but entering it consciously. He believed the shadow must be walked through, not circumvented. It is in pain that your deepest values are born. It is in heartbreak that your greatest insights are revealed. When you suffer consciously, you come face to face with your most honest self. Transformation requires rupture. The soul doesn't evolve through peace, but through pressure. Just as coal becomes diamond through heat, your authentic self emerges through friction. Each painful goodbye, each disillusionment, each fall, they aren't failures, they're initiations. But you must resist the temptation to numb, to escape, to distract. Pain is not something to be managed. It's something to be understood. Feel it fully. Sit with it. Let it wash over you and teach you what must change. This is the fire of individuation, the burning away of false attachments, borrowed values, and ego illusions. What remains is not a weaker self, but a truer one. To live without needing doesn't mean to be emotionless. It means to be sovereign, whole, grounded. Jung envisioned a life where the self is the source, not romance, not career, not admiration. From this place, love becomes generous, not needy. Presence becomes powerful, not performative. To not need is not to reject. It is to offer from freedom. To love without needing is the beginning of wisdom, because only then is love real. When your sense of identity is no longer outsourced, your relationships become spaces of sharing, not survival. You are not searching for someone to complete you. You are offering your completeness as a gift. This is the essence of true intimacy, not losing yourself in another, but expanding through mutual presence. Need arises from scarcity, from fear, from a belief that you are not whole without external affirmation. Jung saw this as a collective wound, one that keeps us chasing, grasping suffering. But when you reconnect with the self, need dissolves, not because you don't feel, but because you finally feel from strength. Living without needing means living with rootedness, with clarity, with capacity to give, to walk away, to remain whole in the face of rejection. It is the beginning of spiritual adulthood, the place where love is no longer a transaction, but a transmission of being. True detachment is sacred. It says, I love you, but I do not own you. I want you, but I do not need you to be whole. Jung saw detachment not as cold withdrawal, but as reverence for reality. To be present without possessing, to desire without demanding. This is not apathy. It is awareness. Detachment is devotion to truth, to what is, not what should be. It is the courage to stay with life as it is, not as your fantasy wants it to be. Detachment, in its truest form, honors both your freedom and the others. It doesn't manipulate, it doesn't cling, it holds space for love to breathe. Jung believed that spiritual maturity begins when you can look someone in the eyes and say, I love you enough to let you be who you are. This is not a passive resignation, it's an active surrender, a surrender of ego, of control, of the illusion that anyone belongs to us. Real love does not bind, it liberates, and real detachment does not harden, it softens you into presence. When you detach with love, you no longer need to fix, to rescue, or to keep. You allow, you witness, you participate without ownership, you feel deeply, and still remain rooted in yourself. This is not for the faint-hearted. It requires you to dismantle the belief that love means holding on. It asks you to burn the scripts and write a new one where love is not control, but co-creation. Emotional detachment is not the end of connection, it is its beginning. Only when you detach from need can you truly choose. Jung's brutal truth is this: you cannot love from fullness if you're still seeking completion. The self must be your source. The path to wholeness is the path to freedom. Let go. Reclaim. Begin again. Not with less feeling, but with greater self. That is the real liberation.